Hello and welcome to the big fight. 2010, the latter half of it was really dominated by one scam after the other. And then, just as this year started, the ghost from the past came back. Bofors, which had been such a major issue through the 80s and the 90s, in a sense returned. Now, the amounts, of course, are much smaller, but a very, very relevant case. And another really interesting coincidence, if you can call it that, just as the Income Tax Tribunal said that there was evidence that kickbacks had been paid to Win Chadda and to Ottavio Kothroki, the CBI the very next day says the case against Kothroki should be closed, and many people really raised their eyebrows on that. So on the big fight today, we're going to look at Bofors once again. A, is it still really relevant in this day and age? And B, the issues that have come from Bofors are still equally relevant now. Is the CBI and other investigative agencies systematically misused by governments? And if that happens, can people ever truly have faith that those who are guilty of corruption will be investigated and will be punished? So that substantially is what we're going to be discussing on the big fight. I'd like to welcome all our guests out here. Manish Tiwari, spokesperson of the Congress Party. Manish, you were probably a little kid when Bofors first broke, weren't you?
I was the president of the NSUI. National president of the NSUI.
Relevantly. Okay. Dr. Subramanian Swamy, president of the Janata Party, who had lots to say on Bofors and on other corruption scandals as well, such as 2G. So it's great to have you back with us. Mr. Joginder Singh, former director of the CBI, has done a lot of work on Bofors and on other cases. We are also going to be asking you, in a sense, to defend the CBI's track record and some of the charges, if you think it deserves to be defended at some point.
Certainly.
Tableen Singh, it's a columnist and author. It's always a pleasure to have you with us here. Mukul Rohatgi, senior advocate of the Supreme Court. At the end of the day, people are to have, if you really want to do something about corruption, people have to have faith that the guilty will be eventually convicted in court. Doesn't seem to be happening. Why is that? D. Raja, National Secretary of the CPI, also joining us. Mr. Raja, thank you so much for joining us. And a little earlier, the BJP, of course, today is in Guwahati, but a little earlier I got the chance to speak to Arun Jaitley, who has done a lot of work on Bofors and on corruption in general. So I got the chance to speak to him. I'm going to actually start off first by playing you a little bit of my interview with Arun Jaitley and what he said a little earlier today on the question of Bofors and corruption.
I think the Bofors case is a test case of corruption in high places, because this is the only case in 63 years of independent India which reached the doorsteps of the Prime Minister's office. No other corruption case has reached as high as this one has. For 23 years, a party which was in power or whose supported governments were mostly in power made a continuous effort at cover-up, and various institutions, including erroneous judgments, unappealed judgments, were responsible for the cover-up.
Right. Arun, I had to ask you about the question of bringing Bofors and making it relevant today. The fact that no one's been really punished for that in all these years, does this somewhere make a point, give an indication to how cases might go in the future? Is it still relevant in terms of how cases of corruption are prosecuted, are chased, and how the investigation into them is done?
You see, it's shown a way that when powerful people or those connected with powerful people are again involved, institutions, including the CBI, can be subverted. And that subversion has been seen in many cases, and Bofors is a shining example of that.
Arun, the fact that the BJP obviously is, and the entire opposition has been on the offensive on the question of corruption in the last few months and on Bofors now for the last 25 years or so, why would you say that? I mean, it's not as if other parties aren't equally guilty. The BJP, for example, take Karnataka. Why do you think the Congress should be put in the dock more than anybody else on the question of corruption?
Well, the Congress has been more in power. The internal accountability in the Congress has always been far less. And more congressmen have obviously been involved in acts of corruption than any other political party. And it's therefore obvious that Congress is normally in the game of organizing these cover-ups.
One more question on the subject of Bofors, Arun, to you, which is, you had the chance. The NDA was in power for years and years. You could have pursued, prosecuted, done something about Bofors a decade ago. You didn't do so. So is it a bit unfair for you to be going on talking about cover-ups?
Of course, we were one of the only governments who did it. 1987 till 2010, we've only seen two genuine non-Congress governments. The VP Singh government registered the FIR. It got the Swiss accounts frozen. It sent a letter rogatory in its brief 11 months in order to get all these documents. The Vajpayee government filed the charge sheet. It got the charges framed in court. It started proceedings for extradition of Mr. Kothrochi, and it started the entire legal process. The rest were only Congress and Congress-supported governments, which were responsible only for a cover-up.
But let me now get in the rest of our panel out here. Let me just very quickly start off with you, Manish. Bofors as a test case. Now, you know, a lot of people in the audience were probably not born when the Bofors scandal first happened. But the fact that 25 years later, or 26 years later, no one's really been punished. Does that give people a sense of impunity when they commit acts of corruption? At the end of the day, no one's really going to come and nail us.
Well, 23 years ago, when the Bofors episode broke, it was political then, and 23 years later, when it is being debated, it is political now. And allow me to jog your memory a little. Possibly you were maybe the same age as I was when in 87 it broke. But the first allegation which was made was that this gun which has been bought by the government of India, it actually fires backwards rather than firing in front. Fortunately, that was completely disabused in the Kargil war, when the gun actually helped you to destroy the bunkers and shorten the conflict and thereby ended up saving a lot of lives. Insofar as the question of slash kickbacks or payoffs is concerned, Mr. Arun Jaitley, was talking about the fact that it was an NDA government which filed the charge sheet. It is absolutely correct. It was an NDA government which filed the charge sheet. But what is the order of the judges who framed the charges? The judge who framed the charges, and allow me to read out one line, says very categorically when he frames charges, which were later on quashed, that no evidence has been collected to show that Indian politicians and or defense personnel have themselves actually received payoffs. This was the order of the judge who framed charges against people who had died. Number three, allow me to also point out that ultimately the charge sheet was quashed, or parts of the charge sheet or the charges were quashed against those people. So right from day one,
and
it was a campaign.
It was controversial.
It was a that's controversy apart. The fact is it's a judicial order, and it is absolutely within the remit of a government to decide whether to appeal a judicial order or not to appeal a judicial order.
Okay.
So the point I'm trying to make is that it was used in 1987 to unfairly target the Congress, and it is being used in 2010 again for the same purpose, and it will meet the same.
Let me just get in somebody who was doing a lot of the targeting at that time and now as well. Mr. Raja. Mr. Raja, there are a lot of people who will question, no doubt, in 2010, 41 crores, what are you talking about? That's chicken feed. It hardly registers on terms of the scams that you're hearing right now, including the one which your namesake is associated with. Is Bofors still relevant? And if it is relevant, why do you think it is relevant?
I think Bofors case is relevant even today. In fact, Bofors case doesn't refuse to die, and it doesn't refuse to move away from the national focus. Why? There are certain political issues, there are certain moral issues, there are certain systemic issues involved. How you deal with Bofors case will set a benchmark how you are going to deal with other scams and scandals in the country.
Absolutely. That's in a sense almost what I started off by saying. Does it set the benchmark on how cases will be dealt with? Mr. Swamy?
Well, the issue is that there is no such thing as the relevance of corruption cases at any moment in time. Corruption cases are relevant all the time till you bring justice to the person who have committed that corruption. So if it's not solved in 25, it doesn't matter, maybe 50, but it has to be in the attention. The second thing I have found myself is that there is a fair amount of collaboration between opposition parties and ruling parties when it comes to prosecuting corruption. I don't agree that one party was more active than another party. The way Kothrochi was able to escape from Malaysia was certainly something which couldn't be ascribed to incompetence. There appears to have been something deliberate there. And I found this in other matters also.
So if I can just understand what you're saying, I think you're saying an important point. You're saying that one of the things that is illustrated by this case is that the opposition, though it may choose to make a big song and dance about corruption, at the end of the day quite often colludes with the governments in power, and
yes,
in a number of cases,
not to
it's not just
BJP
BJP and Congress, even when the shoes on the other foot,
yeah,
they collude with each other to try and cover up the corruption.
That not to bring it to a finality. It's basically used as an instrument of propaganda, but nothing more.
Sabreen, would you agree with that?
I would agree with that totally, because actually I'm very glad that you have Arun Jaitley speaking to us from Guwahati or whatever, because I remember meeting him within about 3 or 4 months of the Vajpayee government coming to power, and he said within 6 months we're going to nail this man, you just listen to me. And you know, I met him later on, and he tried to explain it away about why it hadn't been done. And as everybody knows, Dr. Swamy probably knows better than anyone else, that, you know, there was collusion between the Vajpayee government right at the Prime Minister's level with the Congress party to cover it up, right? Otherwise, there is so much evidence. You have the Swedish policeman giving evidence against
yes,
the people that need to be caught, right? Nothing happens. In Argentina, when they had this guy, apparently it was a 3-page statement that they couldn't translate into Spanish, and he was allowed off the thing. But I just want to make one point to Manish. I was a little older than you when Bofors happened, and please let me tell you that Rajiv Gandhi was a hero in 1987. There was nothing political about what happened. There was no revelation in India. It was a Swedish radio that revealed that bribes had been taken. The reason why it went all the way up to the top was because Mr. Quattrochi was the best friend of the Prime Minister and his wife. Everybody knows this. He makes fertilizer. What was he doing with an arms company? You know, all the evidence is there. And the relevance of Bofors is that all the evidence is just sitting there and never been used. So there's nothing political about this. This is pure and simple corruption.
Mukul, why don't you just come in on this? Let's just set the stage for why we are continuing to 25 years later talk about this one case.
According to me, corruption is now affecting every walk of life and every individual. Whether it is buying a railway ticket or getting a gas connection, ordinary people face it every day. But it has now crossed all barriers and gone from the bottom to the top. That's one. Therefore, it will be relevant because people are struggling with this every day of their lives. Whether it's a school admission, college admission, whatever you call it. You have scams of Medical Council of India, you have scams of Bar Council of India, every day it's happening. But what I want to say is this. Manish made a point that the High Court quashed the charges. I appeared for the CBI. I only want to tell you one thing. As layman, framing of charges is only that there are accusations against a person. It's not a finding, and therefore a trial must take place. So quashing of tentative accusations by a higher court is very, very rare, maybe in 1 in 1,000 cases. This was certainly not a case in which it would have been cut at the root and therefore the matter never goes to trial. But what is disturbing, now that you've asked me, I want to tell you, what is disturbing is this. The High Court quashed the charges on 4th of February 2004. The government changed in May 2004. The CBI said that an appeal should be filed in the Supreme Court, but the government changed. And promptly, the judge who retired, who gave the judgment, retired on 14th of July, and he retired on 10th of April, within 2 months. And very promptly, he was given a plum post-retirement job. These are questionable things. And truth has an uncanny way of coming out. Okay. Nobody knew about this income tax tribunal. Otherwise, I'm sure it would have been fixed. Today you have an income tax tribunal who suddenly gave a judgment. I mean, these are very, very questionable things.
I'll only add.
I can only tell you this.
Enough evidence. I mean, so he's talking about the process of justice being systematically subverted.
Income tax department has depended upon the documents brought by me from Switzerland or the actual payments made, and they were filed in the court. They haven't got any other independent.
That's right.
They have relied on that.
But sir, the documents that you brought, so the income tax is looking at those documents and saying there is evidence that kickbacks were paid. Your own organization, the CBI, doesn't seem to find there's any evidence in the papers that you got back.
I'll explain to you. Mr. Mukul Rohtakee has said here, because the government, CBI by itself cannot decide to go in appeal. It has to go through the government, and whatever the Attorney General of India says, it is 8 o'clock in the night, he says 8 o'clock in the morning, there is no way CBI can overrule him, it has to accept.
So you're, hang on.
He said this is not a case.
Okay, you're being polite out there. Can I paraphrase what you said, and you can tell me whether I'm paraphrasing what you said correctly or not? You, as the director of the CBI, had got evidence back. The Income Tax Department all these years later finds that there is evidence in that. You're saying the CBI, acting under political pressure, decided not to appeal.
It is a legal opinion. It is not a political pressure.
You see, here was a case which was a cause célèbre for the NDA government.
That's right.
Here was a case on which careers had been built up in the Bharatiya Janata Party. And when their entire case was demolished by the High Court, when charges were quashed, rather than using that 90-day window to file an appeal, it is all very convenient to say that the government changed and the appeal wasn't filed. And to respond to what Tavleen Singh said, you see, let me jog everybody's memory a little. In 1992, the then leader of opposition, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, writes a letter to Prime Minister Mr. Narasimha Rao on behalf of the Hindujas, especially in relation to the Bofors case. Now, are we to conclude that because Mr. Vajpayee wrote a letter for Mr. Hinduja, he is guilty by association, he is guilty by taint, and responding to a specific question? You know, I did not want to bring it up personally since Mukul said that he had appeared for the CBI in the matter, but I will stick to saying that the ASG who appeared in the matter was specifically asked by the court that has the CBI found evidence of involvement of any politicians, and that ASG very candidly said, no, the CBI has not found evidence.
Mr. Jogendra Simhan, you answer that. Answer that.
The charges we never
And
find
it is recorded in the judgment.
Seeing as he was the ASG, I'll ask him to answer.
The ASG, the learned judge has recorded these two lines which Manish has said. They were not stated by me at all, and the judgment thereafter goes from para to para, saying that this is the evidence.
Mukul, hang on, what are you saying? You're saying that you're Additional Solicitor General.
Yes.
And statements are ascribed to you and put down, which you never made.
Which I never made, which were untrue. And now understand this.
Now, my jaw is starting to drop now. And
Now let me tell you something. If I had said that there is no evidence with CBI, the judge did not need a 100-page judgment, he would have recorded in one page that the Additional Solicitor General says that there is no evidence and the matter would have been closed.
Manish, he says he never said it. Listen now, I mean, I started off by saying cover up. It's sounding worse and worse at every passing minute.
Without making it personal, and that's why I would, stick to saying that the ASG who represented the government in the matter, he made a certain statement.
But he says he never did. You're talking about him.
No, I know.
He's the man. He's in front of you.
And his name is mentioned in the judgment, but he appeared on behalf of the government. So we'll stick to saying the ASG who appeared on behalf of the government. So therefore, if at all he did not make the statement, so the ASG did not make the statement, all you needed to do was move an application for a correction of the judgment. Why wasn't that application moved?
He wanted to file an appeal. CBI said appeal should be filed. Now let's call a spade a spade. If the then government was lax in not filing an appeal, they must also be blamed, not CBI. Because CBI had collected all that evidence, and that evidence has an uncanny way of coming out.
That's
The
precisely
ASG representing the government at that time has that to say. Now what do you have to say?
That's a concession
Okay,
you're making.
that's precisely my point.
Maybe
Concession that he's making? How? He said if the government didn't allow them to file an appeal.
Maybe the ASG, what he's saying now, or the then ASG, is saying it with the benefit of hindsight. How do we know that the government did not come to the conclusion that yes, it's an appropriate judgment which doesn't need to be appealed against?
If first
Which
government
doesn't need
didn't
to be
file an
appealed
appeal,
against.
it doesn't mean that the second government couldn't have filed an appeal.
That's right.
The CBI's note was on record. If one government says no, another government can do it.
Mr.
There is no law that when the government says it can't file an appeal, it never files an
Mr.
appeal.
Rothgi, you've been law officer of the government. On various appeals, don't you give an opinion saying it is not a fit case for filing an SLP?
Manish,
And isn't it within the government's sovereign right to decide whether an appeal has to be filed or not to be filed?
Let me tell you, on behalf of the government, I have done cases for the government against petty government servants who are accused of swindling 10,000 rupees, and that case is fought up to the Supreme Court. Lakhs are spent, but we have to teach a lesson to the government servant. Was this a case where anybody in his right mind would have said that there is no case for appeal?
Then why in those 90 days, your entire legal team, including Mr. Rawal, the special judge, says that the allegations in the FIR were not substantiated by the charge sheet which has been filed.
We already know what Mukul says. We already know what Mukul says about what you're saying. He's supposed to have said.
High Court judgment. I'm talking about the trial court framing of
Mr. Raja, okay, I'm going to try and broaden this. Let's just get out a little bit from the details of this. Mr. Raja, you, of course, at that time were supporting the government in 2004, and it's worth noting. The basic point we are trying to make is, and I want to come back to the broader issue out here as well, unless you have something specific to say about why the government, the UPA one, which you were supporting, did not decide to pursue the Bofors matter. Was there a cover-up?
Vikram, no, the question is not the quantum of money involved in Bofors scandal. The question is not the legal technicalities. The question is, every successive government failed to pin down the corrupt, guilty persons and punish them. This is the fact of the situation. Now, since the income tax tribunal has come out with clinching evidence, the government of the day, what it is going to do? That is the issue we should raise. This issue is raised in the wake of so many other scandals. 2G or others or CWG, all scandals. So people want some action on the part of government.
Okay.
And it is
so Mr. Raja,
restoring the faith of the people in our democratic polity.
Mr. Raja,
we should not allow
can I just ask you
in the minds of the people.
Fine, Mr. Raja, I know that's why I think this issue continues to be important, because we need to figure out how it happens in one of the highest profile corruption cases that this country has perhaps ever seen, well, till 2G came along, maybe including 2G. In 25 years, 26 years, no one's ever got punished. So that's the reason why we are focusing on it. But I think the broader issue that is being raised, and by Dr. Swamy among others, there's often a process of collusion between one party and the other and the CBI, which is the reason why no one ever gets punished.
CBI is
so you, Mr. Raja,
CBI so the orders of the government.
Yeah, and Mr. Jogendra Singh said CBI functions under order of the government. So you were there as part of the government in the United Front, and also you were supporting the UPA from outside. To your mind, have the governments and other political parties conspired with the Congress in covering this up?
It is for the Congress party to explain to the nation and the people, was there any cover-up? As far as we are concerned, we supported the United Front government. We are part of that government, in fact. And we supported the UPA one government from outside, and we have been fighting on various policy matters. We didn't interfere in the day-to-day work of the government and how the CBI is used or CBI is misused.
Okay. Tableen, is that good enough? Sorry, Tableen, let me just get Tableen in. Tableen, is that good enough?
All right, no, you know, we're getting too lost in the little nitty-gritty of whether we went to this file and that file. Forget that. What Mr. Rodkar said just now is very, very important. That the corruption has now gone down to every kind of institution in India, and it's because the leaders are never caught. And we must remember what C.K. Prahlad, the late C.K. Prahlad said. He said we have to deal with corruption before India becomes rich. Because countries that do not deal with corruption do not become rich. That's the bottom line. And because we don't deal with any of these matters, you continue to have them. I mean, why should the next minister not make millions when you can see that no one's ever going to get caught?
Okay, no one ever gets caught. And I think, and Dr. Swamy, let me just get you in on this. What Tableen says is exactly at the root of it. Why do people make money in India at the highest governmental and other levels with such impunity? Is because they feel we will never get caught.
Yeah.
And even if somebody digs out the scam, nothing will happen. I mean, look at the evidence trail in Bofors. Look at what, forget about anybody else saying it. This is what the income tax department says. Look at the money trail. From Bofors, it moves to account number 18051-53 of AE Services. From there, it goes to Colbar Investments Limited, Panama. The amounts of money are known, 7 million. Colbar, it goes to Wettelson. The amounts of money are known. We know all of this, and this has been known. This has been known by you.
I brought by me from Switzerland to India.
And is this very clear? Is the trail, to your mind, Mr. Jogendra Singh, is this as clear and clinching an evidence as is required.
In fact, we recommended for that. Rest is for the government and its official law officers.
Is this clear and clinching evidence you think would nail
what else?
the guilty?
This is totally documentary evidence.
Vikram,
Once AB before says that we transferred so and so money, it is nobody's case that CBI conspired with Switzerland government or Indian government conspired with to frame up any A, B, C, D individual who are named in the documents here, so that they could be prosecuted here. And on the same basis, which are originally, I must compliment the paper Hindu, the appellants in this case, who went up right up to the president of Switzerland, included Katrochi, Vincheda, and Hinduja is also.
Fine. So, Manish, is this evidence or is this not evidence?
Allow me to give you the history of this Income Tax Appellate Tribunal order also. Between 1990 and 2010.
Forget about who all covered it up. Manish, please, let's not divert.
You've not covered it up. You don't even know about it. Between 1990 and 2010, this assessment was quashed 4 times by different CIT appeals. You know, what has come out now is the first time that an order has been upheld, but the same order on the same facts.
But finally the order has been upheld.
And number two,
are you contradicting the evidence?
Vikram, I have got the judgment here of the
all these charges were there were a part of the charge sheet, and that was dealt by the judge, and they were quashed. They were quashed.
Finally, it's been upheld. When it was quashed earlier, not as relevant. Finally, Manish, he was the CBI director.
Manish, he was a perverse order. Let me say this.
No, this is a perverse order.
I don't think
you have the revenue relying
got the order.
Charges from a charge sheet which have been quashed.
What were those 2 bank accounts?
So therefore,
it's a perverse order, he said.
Can I just tell you something?
Mr. Quattro's money was in London that got released.
It seems to me that Mr. Tiwari now, instead of defending the Congress, is wanting to defend Mr. Vinchada. This was an appeal. It was the 3rd tier. The first officer found that Vinchada took 52 crores, which is 6%. It was affirmed by Commissioner of Income Tax Appeals. The ITAT is the highest body in the Income Tax Department, which consists of a judicial member and an accounting member. And they have said in a 100-page judgment that the documents are crystal clear, which show that Mr. Chadda took 52 point so many crores in his account. How does Mr. Tiwari say that Bin Chadda didn't take it?
Okay,
now,
can I?
Sir, the question now.
Can I hold a brief for anybody? Don't put
then
words
why
in my
are you saying
mouth.
that this
But allow me to put it on
why
record.
Are you saying that
allow me to give you the background before you came to this. 4 times. 4 times this assessment order was quashed by CIT appeals between
I'm keeping on trying.
and 2010.
Fine. I'm going to take a break.
In 1998. So when you put facts on record,
Manish,
put all the facts on the record, Mr.
Truth has an uncanny way of coming out somewhere or the other, and this is the truth.
Well, it is the same truth. It is the same truth in the matter in which you appeared and the charge sheet was quashed. It is the same truth. So therefore, because it was quashed then, now to save face, you are relying upon this. So therefore, let's not obfuscate facts, Mr. Otgi.
Mukul, Manish, thank you. Now, I'm just going to take a break right now because I want to then come back to the slightly broader issue. We're talking about covered up. Now, let's step away from Bofors as well. This is not the first time that the CBI or the process of justice has been accused of being subverted, of some way justice being covered up. We're going to come back to that issue a little later. And let's look at, for example, whether the investigating agencies are deliberately misused by governments in power or not. That when we come back. Welcome back to The Big Fight, and we've been having quite a big fight on Bofors itself and what its implications are all these years later. But also, we do need to turn our attention to one other subject which probably deserves a big fight by itself, whether the investigating agencies are systematically misused by the government or not in an effort to cover up. And that is something that I did ask Arun Jaitley when I spoke to him a little earlier in the day. I began by really asking him whether the CBI was politically misused, and if so, how to stop it.
Well, obviously the CBI as an agency has outlived its utility. The CBI has become a political instrument in the hands of the government, particularly in the last 5 to 7 years. We've seen a gross misuse of power. And I think it's completely necessary now to take the investigative agency away from the administrative control of the government, to have some independent mechanism for its appointments. The CVC mechanism was conceived by the Supreme Court, but once you appoint a tainted man as a CVC, you obviously don't expect an honest CBI to emerge out of that.
But again, Mr. Jaitley, it has to be asked in the NDA years, why didn't you take steps to free up the CBI, liberate it from the shackles of government control, make it a genuinely independent, impartial body which can assure the rest of us that if there are cases of corruption, they will actually be persecuted?
But who says we didn't do much? We never misused the CBI. There was hardly a charge against us that we misused the CBI. Even in Mr. Advani's case, we didn't withdraw the prosecution. The CBI filed appeals against orders which went in favor of Mr. Advani. So nobody can accuse us of having misused the CBI.
All right, that was Arun Jaitley a little earlier in the day. You were laughing uproariously. Why were you laughing?
I was laughing for the simple reason that the one person you should have had on the show was Mr. Tarun Tejpal of Tehelka. And they would have told you of how not only the CBI, but every investigative agency of the government was misused, abused by the NDA government to run them into the ground, bankrupt them, put their promoters behind bars, and Mr. Arun Jaitley function to come and say that
I just want to take 2 minutes of your time, sir. Just, forget about what I may be saying or anybody else may be saying. Let's just take a look at what some of the courts have had to say about the CBI in recent years. The Supreme Court, Jain Hawala case. The recent experience in the field of prosecution is discouraging. The Bofors case, I agree there are certain malified intentions in the case, and no doubt in that. There were malified intentions in the defreezing of the bank account of Kothruki. But there are others. CBI, the Supreme Court on CBI on the Mayawati disproportionate asset case. If the CBI and Mayawati are together, let the petition go. The Supreme Court on the Mulayam Singh Yadav disproportionate asset case. Since when has the CBI started taking advice from the government? Why don't you come to the court for clarification? On the fodder scam, what precaution of any authority tries to delay, the court will be well within its right. I mean, case after case after case.
Not true. It's all right to make an observation. But point is, no government wants to make it independent, no government wants to make it autonomous, for the simple reason which the British had recorded when the original Police Act was being drafted. Macaulay became the Governor General of India. In the original Police Act, they had said here police will be independent like judiciary. He called the members of the Police Commission, which drafted 1861 Police Act. What are you doing, stupid fellows? We have come to rule here. Who will listen to us if police is kept away? That tradition has continued. Here, Supreme Court said here, in 22nd September 2006, 1 minute, Swamy, yes, they said here, give at least a fixed tenure, separate law and order from the investigation. No government is willing to do that. They have been issuing notices after notices. This will continue. Let me tell you that nobody tells CBI that you leave this man or do this thing here. First class legal advice comes, and I'll give you my own experience.
Yeah, Jain Hawala, fodder case, you pursued many of those.
As an Under-Secretary in the Home Ministry, I wanted advice in 70s. On a particular case, I rang up an officer in Law Ministry. I said, I want advice. He said, what advice you want, for or against? I said, obviously for my case. I'm sorry, I mean, this is something which I'm sure must be going on even now. You can get any kind of advice you want.
Dr. Swamy, I'm going to come to all of you for final comments now. Dr. Swamy.
Is this my final comment?
Well, just to respond to this. Systematic cover-up.
Whatever you read out just now, the positive aspect is that it was brought to the court's notice by individuals outside the government. Even this 2G, but for the fact that some of us, I went to the Supreme Court, this matter would have been completely hushed up. The Indian laws do provide for vigilant individuals to run a parallel process by which the law can be initiated. So that is what we need, a much more alert and well-informed public.
Before I come to final comments, I want to very quickly turn to the audience out here. I want to do a quick snap unscientific poll. How many of you think that people in positions of power will never get punished for corruption?
They'll go from one court to another.
Not a single one of you think people will be punished. Anybody want to elaborate why?
Vikram, not only they'll go from one
gentleman on here, very
quickly. President for clemency and mercy.
There are two kinds of powers which exist in society. One is finance, and second is this political power and all. So anybody who has that power would outrightly do anything and would escape.
And does Bofors illustrate that, to your mind?
Yeah, the political parties, they are just using these scandals against each other for their, against their thrones. Like, when the time comes.
And they use it. Some of the cases, very quickly, final comment on that gentleman there.
After 63 years of independence, I don't see any political party who's clean. Mind my words. And secondly, if we see, if it's a constable who's involved in the corruption, at the end of the day, which party does he belongs to?
Okay,
now,
fine.
You
fine.
can ask another question.
I'm going to come to final comments now. Gentlemen, we're really over. Okay, ending this entire thing. Final comment, and the fact that the reason I'm again coming back to Bofors is 25 years, no one's got punished. Are we going to be here 25 years later discussing the 2G scam or the Potter scam or the Mayawati cases or the Mulayam Singh Yadav cases? No. Nothing will happen. It'll all be covered up politically.
Vikram, I want to answer it as a layman, not as a lawyer, but as a citizen of this country. According to me, there is no point blaming bureaucrats, CBI, etc., etc. Do some introspection. Unless we put the lawmakers' house in order, you can't have parliament with people of dubious antecedents. Unless you set an example from the top, what will filter down? So that's what you have to correct.
So watch whom you're voting for.
You have to correct your electoral laws maybe. I mean, it's well known that you have 20% with or more in parliament with dubious characters. Set them right and maybe it will filter down.
Subject to a separate big fight, Mukul, we're going to get you in for that.
Tableen? That's what I feel.
I meet constantly young politicians and I ask them why they want to be in politics. And they say very openly they want to make money. So you've got to, yes, you've got to deal with corruption at the top for this to stop. Take away their privileges, take away their houses, and I promise you'll get a better class of politician who's really there for public service.
I've been carrying the point which Mr. Rohtgi and Tavleen Singh has said here. Put the onus for having disproportionate assets on the individuals. Do not ask the state to prove it. You go on investigating whether land is in Tamil Nadu, whether he's got a college in UP or this thing. Change the law, put the onus on a person, as you like the income tax, that from where have you got to have the money, you have to prove for that. You will find all these people tumbling out for that.
All right, Mr. Raja. Mr. Raja.
The government of the day must take very credible, visible actions in corruption cases. Otherwise, there will be cynicism at all levels that is not good for our democracy, democratic polity.
Fine. Dr. Swamy.
Well, I would say it's not enough to be honest and have personal integrity. We have a Prime Minister who has both, but he doesn't have a spine. So therefore, you not only must have integrity, but you must have guts also.
That is a medical problem.
Two, I would like the educated people, stop being spectators, enter the field. You have the law on your side. Do it yourself if the law agency doesn't do it.
Do it yourself? How?
Go to court, like I have gone.
Oh, go to court.
Instead of sitting around.
I thought you were asking for some more dramatic, direct action. Okay, Manish, we have flat out of time. Final, very quick thoughts from you.
Well, the last thing that I would like to say is that Bofors was a ghost in 1987 and Bofors is a ghost in 2010. And those who believe that they can build their careers by slaying ghosts are totally and absolutely misconceived and misplaced. And allow me to remind Mr. Subramanian Swamy that if the Prime Minister wouldn't have had a spine, the Prime Minister wouldn't have risked his government on the Indo-US civil nuclear deal. I think that is evidence of spine.
That
vote was also obtained by corruption.
Okay, a ghost from the past, the ghost of 1987 is still the ghost of 2010. Frankly, in 23 years, we should have exercised some of these goals, but unfortunately we haven't. Let's hope that the point will come that we will be doing this. And let's certainly hope that the news scams are not something that will go on lingering 23 to 24 years later. Thank you all so much for watching The Big Fight. We'll be back again next week.